Hello. Hello. It's here. It's time. Our third talk. Hello. How's it going? Hello. Don't call me moon expert now. I don't feel very moon expert. It's the third time we've ever talked. It is, yeah. The unfortunate thing about talking today is I had a small coughing fit shortly before the stream that hurt my throat real nice. So we'll get through it. Hello, this is Evelyn the Moonalin. Hello. Most important question. Is the moon most British voice imaginable? Oh. Is the moon made out of cheese? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We'll find out. Moonalin or Lunalin? Well, maybe today we'll find out something about the difference between those, but I think either one will be fine. My body is trying to stop me. Spot on, thank you, yeah. What did humanity do before Bloodborne invented the moon? We'll find out today. Hello. Yeah, I inhaled the radioactive moon rocks, I'm sorry. As it says, this is a sort of... This is not the history of the moon in terms of, like, the entire existence of the moon. We're not gonna get into how the moon was formed or any of that. I did learn about that, and if we have time, I could try to talk about it a little bit. I did initially intend for there to be more, like, astronomical stuff in this, but then it got kind of out of hand. So I pared it down to focus more on, sort of the human, societal, cultural dealings with the moon. No, we are not talking about the planets crashing into each other or whatever the heck happened. Not talking about, Theia, I think is what they call the theoretical colliding object that formed the moon. Anyway, howdy, Professor. I don't think I can be called Professor. What does this class work? I have a big test at the end that will be 9% of our grade. Is it primarily attendance, group projects? Attendance, yeah. Just attendance. That's your whole grade. It's not that I don't think you'll get it. It's more I don't get it. No, I did get it well enough, but there is too much. There is too much. I have a lot of slides already, and I took out some more as well. I'm seeing one right now that I maybe should have gone back to fill in that I didn't. But that's okay. Well, I'll fill you in regardless. There's one that I left out that hopefully can become part of a different talk. But this is what we've got for now. I'm gonna try my best to keep things really chill and not go too hard on, I don't know, like, not strain my voice, essentially. Not strain my voice, not get too stiff, just kind of keep things going. I turned it into a history talk. Yeah, I tried to do some more astronomy. So I started research for this. I just picked up an astronomy textbook. And I was like, I'm gonna find something in here. Then I went, oh, what about the moon? Then I went, oh, what about people's... Whoa! Moon flunky. Uh-oh. Maybe this can help bump the grade. Thank you. It can actually. Yeah, that can help with your grade. I'm not above bribes. But yeah, I also looked into and found some facts on other moons that I wanted to include, and I ended up not getting that in here. But there's a lot of fun stuff about other moons in the solar system it was fun to read about. If nothing else, even if it didn't end up in here. But how are you guys? Before we get going, we can yap just a little bit because we will not be able to after. I will do this and then immediately go so that my voice can rest. All the different moons are different cheeses. Yeah, what is it? Europa is the volcanic one? No, that's wrong. I don't remember which ones are which. But the super volcanic one could be like a spicy cheese. Io, it's Io. Dang it. Is Europa the one that they think has life in like an ocean under the ice? Is that right? Or could potentially have life? Yeah, okay. Who would win in a fight, the moon or 1 billion lions? We'll find out today. We'll find out. See, this is why the talk isn't about those things also, because I figured you would all already know these things. That was part of it. I was learning these things and I went, I bet everybody already knows about this. So why bother? So there's probably also plenty of stuff in here that you know about anyway, but been lazy all weekend, nice. Doing good, reading more Song of Ice and Fire, feeling conflicted, but it's fun. Oh, okay. Yes, but you want to hear me talk about them? Okay, well, who knows, maybe eventually. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people already know a lot about moons and stuff, so I took a different angle from the astronomy angle for the most part. Played a lot of Magic the Gathering with a coworker! Nice! Very fun. Your planet knowledge from Destiny? Great. See, I did not absorb anything from my brief time playing Destiny. None of that stuck with me. But yeah, those are some things that I did read about but did not make it into the talk. Shall we begin? I'm gonna try to keep this like feeling casual so that I don't— Whoa! Wait a minute, are we graded? There's a behind the scenes hidden Melvin leaderboard. Thank you, you know. Now you've secured a good grade. Alright. Oh yeah, I put together a playlist this morning. I don't know if it's like I don't know if it's my best playlist assembly work, but hopefully it'll be okay. Anyway, here's a few basic introductory facts about the moon, to get us going. We'll the 29.5-day cycle of the moon will come up a few times throughout this, so remember that one later. I feel like the precision of it is notable. It is the 5th largest and most massive moon in our solar system. We mentioned the Galilean moons just a minute ago. Those are the only ones that are any bigger than our moon. And its diameter of 3,476 kilometers makes it about the size of Africa. It has about the same surface area as Africa, which I thought was a fun way to put it in perspective. Oh, something else we're not going to talk much about is the space race. I have a note here to mention that ahead of time. We're not going to talk much about the space race because that's another one I was like, people already know about that. And I'm also not so interested in it. It'll come up though. Anyway, this is the moon. Something I learned in assembling this talk. Okay, so at the bottom left, we have we have images of the moon from the northern and southern hemispheres. This still kind of baffles my mind that it's flipped. If you cross the equator, it looks upside down, or I guess right side up, depending on what you're used to. It's flipped the other way because you're viewing it from the other. It baffles me still. But like, because of the angle of view, it becomes upside down. This is why this is not an astronomy talk, because I cannot fathom this, because you flip, like, right? I get space magic. And also, like, all the constellations look different too, because it's just like the matter of the angle difference between the hemisphere. So we have a photo. I tried to do my best to get comparable photos of the north and south doing the geometry. I know, it doesn't make sense, right? I'm glad I'm not the only one who finds this absolutely baffling. And this also extends to the way that like the crescent moon will look at different points. It will point in different directions based on location, you know. Hello. Would you see the moon flip if you walk across the equator at night? That's what I wonder. I don't know. Like, I think it has to be sort of that's why I can't understand it. Like, if you're at the equator, what is it then? If you're at the equator, then what? Yeah, it has to be a gradual thing. But I don't know. It baffles me. Like that bit in Inferno when Satan turns upside down while they climb him. Yeah, it's just like that. So in different countries, there's different legends about what the marks on the moon look like. Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, we'll talk about those later. I think that is a part of why there's different ones. Makes sense now you think about it, just never thought about it, right? I hadn't either. I feel like that's not something you would ever think about. At the equator, it disappears. You wrote a love story between the sun and moon for the girl you liked. Well, you were participating in a rich mythological tradition in doing that. I'm sorry she rejected you, though. If you're at the equator, you just see it when you look to the side. That's it. Anyway, that's our fun introductory facts. There's probably a lot of other things we could throw in there. Do you guys like words? There's a lot of words related to the moon and different words for the moon that have evolved over time and manifested in a lot of different terms. So the Latin luna for the moon is how we get lunatic and lunacy, which I feel like it's very easy to not think of why or how that comes from being relevant to the moon. But we will also see a bit more about how that came to be later on as well. The Greek term we don't see used as much in things, but we have a really, really long history of sort of the Germanic to English path here, and a lot of different things, and how the moon, the reference to the moon in language has sort of always been tied to the measuring of time, especially. So that's kind of gonna be a through line of what we're gonna see here. Is that related to senile? I don't know. That didn't come up in anything I read. There's something else. Okay, yeah. I didn't see it anywhere, but people act weird when they can see it at night. Yep, that's true. The Greek stealing from Elden Ring. No menses from Bloodborne. You might know it from something else as well. That's how a few different terms come about. But it does make sense the way it's used in Bloodborne, considering the moon and blood. Also some of this is the way I've laid it out here. There's maybe more detail and more, it's maybe not as certain as I've laid it out in this way. There's a lot of, you know, this, it was known as this, or this, or this, or we think it was this. I've tried to simplify it for us here, for this progression. I think people first reacted when they saw the moon during the day. Well, that would be pretty common sometimes, I suppose. At least I feel like we have to be pretty okay with it. That's a pretty standard part of how the moon goes. Anyway, we have an illustration from not the time of the Romans, but of their myths. I did not get as far as finding out why the goddess Luna has her chariot pulled by people, but go for it, girl. You get them. Moon's horns. Yeah, she's got, you can see she's got the crescent moon on her head, and you definitely get a lot of relation between the crescent moon and horns in a lot of symbolism. Have you ever seen a horse at night? You know, you make a good point. I haven't ever seen a horse at night, so it's gotta be people. I also have a note that so the moon, I didn't fill my note out thoroughly enough. So the different phases of the moon have different names, and one of them is gibbous, which apparently comes from the Old English word for hunchback, which is fun, and gibbous being the like not quite full sort of shape, if I'm not mistaken. We also have in different languages the terms for moon can be either masculine or feminine. Most of them it's feminine, but it can be masculine as well, and we'll also see that in a lot of myths about the moon. There's differences in what we decide for that. It reminds me of Hawaii. Oh, okay. Etymology is cool. It's something I'd be interested in pursuing more one day. But that's a little introduction to how we refer to the moon, and sort of setting up some recurring themes we'll see in perception of the moon. I also have a teeny tiny little overview of astronomy. I'm gonna do my best. Hold on, I don't have my notes aligned properly so that I can see them well. Move over. There we go. I'm covering up part of it. I should move. I planned to use this overlay to cover up less. Is that 100% effective? No. I should have still worked in some buffer space, but it's okay. We'll make it work. Shintoism, the moon is male. Others are considering most other religions treat the moon as female. I don't know if I would say most. We'll see some examples of that, but I don't know if most is actually true. Who cares if Newton gets covered up? Dang. Anyway, back in the olden days, everybody believed that the sun and the planets and everything circled the Earth. Welcome in. This was at just about everybody. Who's Newton? See, this is why we can't cover him up. This was disproven by Copernicus in the 16th century. And then in the 17th century, we saw improvements on Copernicus's work and Galileo's introduction of the telescope. My mind was blown when I was reading a book and they showed part of this image down here of Galileo's actual notes. It's wild to me that those exist and we can just look at those. That seems like the kind of thing that would be lost to time, but also when you think about it, like the 17th century is not that long ago. So maybe it's not so surprising, but it's still, yeah, it is incredible how recent that was in the scope of human history. Just like 300 years ago, we could see things. I also saw, in at least one book that, you in today's world, if you have a pair of binoculars, you can see the moon better than Galileo ever could with his telescopes. That's the level of technology that he was working with at the invention of the telescope. And he was able to do a lot with that. Yeah. An anime. Oh, I've heard of Orb. That's cool. Good evening. How are we doing? Pretty good. I was talking about Galileo. You can probably see it better with most phone cameras these days. Maybe? I don't know about that specifically, but maybe. And then things were finally really solidified in terms of our astronomical knowledge and things once Newton said, hey, how about gravity and the laws of motion? You guys probably already know about these things for the most part, but I wanted to at least gloss over them and give us a bit of the time scale on everything. I also have a bit of the Ptolemaic model up there, which was sort of the prevalent geocentric model of things for a very, very, very long time, with variations gradually, you know. yeah, Gravitas, the Elden Ring spell, yeah. You prefer the Bama-centric theory? Oh, I don't know about that one. I don't think Newton would agree with it. It's a shame we can't talk about the heavenly spheres anymore. I know, I'm a big fan of the heavenly spheres. Something else I found in this was, there was, back in like the ancient Greeks had the belief that like, it wasn't just that everything revolved around the earth, it was that there were actual solid spheres nested inside each other that the planets were like embedded in. I think that's better, honestly. Let's go back to that. That's so fun. And yeah, I thought they played music as they moved. Yeah, the music of the spheres. I do want to learn more about that because that's so cool. There was a lot about like the harmony of motions and stuff. Yeah. It's way cooler. They had way cooler ideas about stuff. Let's see. I'm gonna take a pause. I'm gonna take a voice pause to scan the rest of my notes for this slide and make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, I do have a couple more. The geocentric model was dominant, but apparently there were people as far back as the ancient Greeks who did believe that the Earth orbited the sun. They did, people did at least have the idea, it just wasn't accepted. Keep adding to your space headcanon. Dante's great for that. Oh, okay, cool. They had creative world building. They really did. They really did. Speaking of the Galilean moons, it was very shortly after the invention of the telescope that Galileo was able to discover those. And moons first became referred to as satellites in 1610. And that's now sort of the common, at least scientific terminology. Nowadays, though, we have a sort of different idea of what a satellite is, of course. Welcome in. No need to be sorry. There was this issue for a long time. This maybe isn't like the best fit in terms of timing for where we're at right now, but there was this issue for like how to keep track of time while sailing back around this time, and they ended up being able to use those 4 moons to track, like they used to be able to determine the time at which they were supposed to cross Jupiter and use that to determine longitude. So Cassini was commissioned to improve the maps of France and ended up proving that it was smaller than they thought. But that didn't solve the issue of keeping time while sailing as much as they had hoped. That still continued to be an issue for a while, but they did continue to use the moons of Jupiter to make maps and track longitude into the 19th century. Yeah, isn't that wild? Isn't that cool? Also use the moons to measure speed of light for the first time too. Dang. Yeah, that is true. I think I have a note in here somewhere about that. And what's extra wild about that is, like, for comparison, we only found the moons of Mars in 1877. It's insane to think of how large Jupiter and its moons are, relatively. And of course the moons of Mars are, like, extra small. But it took that much longer for us to advance far enough to be able to find those ones. Just look at Jupiter! It's too hard not to spot them. Yeah, yeah. Is it really? The thing is, I've never gotten to, like, actually do a lot of, sidebar. I had a telescope as a kid, but my parents bought, like, a really stupidly, complex telescope, and I wasn't allowed to touch it on my own because they didn't want me to accidentally break it. They didn't want, but they would also never, like, take it out to set up for me, so I think I got to use it twice ever. And it was, like, a really nice telescope, so I've never actually done a lot of looking at space. Number 1, help you set it up? Yeah! Right? Why do they do this? Yeah, apparently all it takes is binoculars. I feel like, how do you hold them steady enough, though? I don't know. I can't see the stars from here anyway, though, or from where I live. They're wider to capture light, but you don't need much magnification to see them. Wow! I guess that makes sense how Galileo found them so quickly. Yeah, the Mars's moons are very small. One of them is so small that it's going to crash into Mars in a relatively not very long. A margin of error, a few atoms. Yeah, we did advance really quickly. They thought I was already nerdy enough, didn't want to add astronomy. I mean, I was told I wasn't allowed to try to go to space as a kid. I couldn't pick that as my profession. Almost will crash, they almost will fly away. Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of the more recent history. Let's go back in the human timeline ways. They're not allowing you to use a telescope as a result of that? No, I don't think so, but bad influence, yeah. Way before that, we had 32,000 years ago. This is a bone. There's other artifacts similar to this, but this is, I think, the one that this was first discovered on. This was found in France and sat in a museum collection for a really, really long time before this one guy went, wait a second, and discovered that it's actually tracking the phases of the moon. And I'm gonna be real, I cannot fully explain to you this diagram that's supposed to explain it, but I think it tracks 2 full moon cycles, and shows that people were, sorry, there's got something in my eye. People were paying attention to and tracking the passage of time for a lot longer than we thought they even could have. Considering this was long before the Bronze Age, and apparently at one time it was believed that the Bronze Age is when sort of that kind of rational thought arose in humanity. But it turns out that was wrong. Don't see it? That's fair. It's kind of hard to tell. Archaeologists are on something different from me. I see the marks. It's hard for me to follow them in exactly the way we understand it here. Tracking when it's in retrograde. Well, this follows multiple cycles. I think it's supposed to follow from like down here. No. I'll have a link in the description that shows another diagram of like the order this goes in, because it's like, I think this is the last one that it shows. And then if you follow it backwards through all of these, I think it goes roughly like this. I think it starts here and goes like more or less like this. And why did the people of 32,000 years ago put it in that order? I don't know. I don't even know if that's an important concern, but to anybody, but archaeologists' brains do work different. But there are also on the more famous caves. I have no idea how to pronounce the name of these caves. I probably should, but once again, it's in France. I don't know French. But this is also representations of the moon and the moon cycles. But again, archaeologists are on something I am not. I'm gonna take their word for it. I can see it more on the slower one where like it seems it gets smaller as it goes. These are more recent than that, but still quite a while ago. And these ones are not the only astronomical representations. They also have different constellations and star clusters depicted on the caves as well. Archaeologists immediately... No, it wasn't immediate. Like, people excavated those, they found them in a cave or whatever, and the archaeologists who found them at the time didn't think anything of them. They just put them in storage and cataloged them, etc., and that was it. And then it was a long time later that somebody actually wanted to find meaning in it, and there it was. Somebody went, wait a second, these can't just be meaningless little marks. But anyway, horse moon horse. Bloodborne again. Moon horse. But I'll have a link to more on this if you're curious about it. Something else from around this sort of time, there were a lot, I don't know about a lot, but it's a common find for there to be like carved fertility goddesses who are depicted holding a horn that is representative of the moon. So that association goes back really far. And then more recently than that, in the times of civilization, I wonder why that association was so deeply ingrained. Well, so the fun thing about the phases of the moon, and we'll see this, so I think the thing is, like, you get it more articulated more and more over time in different myths, the way that the cycles of the moon are perceived as tied to the life of people. Not be the first link you thought of with fertility goddess and horns. So the idea with a lot of moon mythology is that the cycle of the moon growing to full and then decaying back to nothing resembles, you know, life. We grow and then we reach sort of a peak and then we die. We gradually decay and die, and so there's been a lot of association of that cycle of the moon with humanity over time, and so the moon can represent in like its growth phases that sorry, my sentence fell apart on me. It represents growth and fertility in that way as well. And also, yes, there is an additional sort of cyclical element that is tied to it. It's almost like it's revolving in some sort of orbit, I know, right? It's probably started off as purely practical, then we started adding metaphor on top. Like the tracking of time with the moon, probably, yeah. But if you mean we contemporary, and not we as humanity over all of history, I don't know if I don't agree with that. But anyway, we can see that here we have the Mesopotamian god, not goddess, known as Sin or Nana, who was the god of the moon and associated with bull's horns. And you can see the crescent moon here shown directly pointing up. And that comes back to our the moon looks different at different points on the earth. Like it would have looked more like this there in overall history. Yeah, okay. Why is my nightlight not always on? And then we tried to understand why. Why loud truck? Why loud truck now? That's fine. But Sin was not only the god of the moon, he was considered the head of the Mesopotamian pantheon, and at least some records, some traditions, which would put the moon above the sun, which we today would usually expect to see. Why loud truck is an interesting anthropological question. Could be, not one I think I want to ask. I think I already know enough about that one. But when we go really far back in history like this, we see a bit more of the moon given prominence over the sun, or at least not subordinate to the sun, in the ways you see in later mythology. We also have the Aztec pyramid of the moon, which I could not find a lot of information about the actual Aztec moon god or goddess as it was listed. But supposedly the god or goddess of the moon and farmers. And we'll see more association of the moon with plants later as well. But this is the Pyramid of the Moon, which is on the Avenue of the Dead, I think, and it sits like at the end of it, which I saw could be thought to represent sort of the moon in relation to death and in relation to passage to the afterlife. But obviously we don't have so much remaining about these. Doing chores at her mansion. Have a gentler touch compared to the blinding, indomitable sphere of infinite power. Yeah, definitely slightly more appealing. Aztecs were also fantastic astronomers. This would have also been something that I think I left out a bit of, was this would have been in the time in various places where we didn't have an accurate like the kind of heliocentric model and understanding of the universe that we have now, or at least of the solar system that we have now, but they would have made very careful, extensive observations in certain cultures of the moon and kept a lot of records of the moon and the planets and everything, and tracked their movements to find patterns over time that allowed them to predict with some accuracy, or even with really good accuracy in some cases, the movements of the moon and the planets and eclipses and stuff. Oh, my voice. Oh, my voice. I'm gonna take a second. But overall, we see in a lot of different places over time really different representations of the moon. And so I've taken Egypt as sort of an emblematic example. There's sort of an infinity of moon myths out there that we could go into, but I chose to focus a little bit more on this one here because the moon was especially important in ancient Egypt because they used it to track when the Nile would flood, which was sort of what their whole lives and survival revolved around. The moonomyth, yeah. But they even had more moon gods and goddesses and things, deities associated with the moon than I've listed here even. Moons used for tracking seasons for both agriculture and rituals, yes. Gods were complicated as one god could have many related aspects. Medicine was related to agave, alcohol, and rabbits, for example. Ooh, yeah, you see a lot of moon gods that have different things they are associated with as well. Thank you for filling that out a bit for us. Use an eclipse they knew was coming to scare them. That's great. But anyway, this is a good example of a myth that you see in a few different cultures and a few different manifestations of a god who is killed and dismembered and then reassembled, sort of in the way that the moon gradually fades and then is restored. So you get that with Osiris, who is killed by his brother Set. And then Isis, his wife and sister, finds all of the pieces of him and puts him back together. And then their son Horus is also associated with the moon as sort of like the new moon and the new coming of the moon. And they each sort of represent different things about the moon. So Osiris is associated with the moon and resurrection and fertility, but Isis is sort of a part of the cycle of the moon, like she's responsible for it continuing, so she has her own connection to it. And then you also have Thoth, who is not related to them explicitly within this story, but is another god of the moon who has more to do with sort of the immediate influences of the moon on life. Also being the scribe of the gods and other like cultural things that the moon influences. Osiris does go through some stuff. The whole story is a little more involved. He gets like thrown in, he gets tricked into a coffin that they nail shut, and they like throw him in the sea or something, and it's a lot. The moon is also frequently associated with magic, yes. Vamp stars, I learned this from Rick Riordan. But something else of importance with the Egyptians and the moon and a lot of other cultures in the moon was calendars. So the moon has always been viewed in relation to the tracking of time. There it is. Because it's what allows us to perceive time in a way that the sun doesn't. The sun functioning on a yearly cycle with the seasons, it doesn't change enough day to day for us to really understand much from it immediately. But the moon changing as much as it does and being on its smaller cycle is very perceptible and very trackable. And so there's been a lot of, like, the core initial idea behind calendar starts with the moon, and then we kind of go from there. So a solar year is 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 48 seconds. Currently. But a complete lunar cycle is 29.53 days, which means that if you just track by lunar cycles, if you just track by a month being an exact lunar cycle, you end up 11 days short of a full solar year. So there's been a lot of struggle over time to get us to the point we're at of sort of trying to deal with these two things together. No, there was a missing piece of Osiris. You can look that one up on your own. There was a missing piece of Osiris, yes. Those spare 11 days are when the purge happens. So a common practice that I have listed here is under Mesopotamian is that the month starts at the first sight of the crescent moon. This is also the way that the Islamic calendar is dictated. The month starts when the crescent moon is first sighted after the new moon, and it's sort of like an official position for someone to look for and call out the new moon when it appears. And it was even a position in Rome briefly. They called it the pontifex, which I think might also mean something else, but they appointed a pontifex to call out when the moon first rose, and that turned out to be horribly corrupt, and they got rid of the practice not long after. But the Mesopotamians and others had an intercalary month that was used to make up the difference between the lunar cycles and the solar year. Pontifex is such a sick title for a corrupt man who was just supposed to call out when the moon rose. Anyway, Bamfester, I have a question. We also talk about how the days and nights could affect tracking time because of how the days and nights change closer to the poles. No. No. Sorry. That didn't come up in any of my reading. The Romans could corrupt any position, true. Oh, okay. So Pontifex was other things, but for a time at least, Pontifex was also supposed to be responsible for when the month started, but we hacked it up. The Islamic calendar is still an entirely lunar calendar that's just based on the cycles of the moon, and that determines the timing of holidays and rituals, which is fun. Roman Pontifex. Oh! Pontifex finds its way into Half-Life. That's fun. It's not just Bloodborne, guys! The Egyptians, as we mentioned, the tides, well, not the tides, but the flooding of the Nile seasonally was very important to them, and so they ended up with two different calendars, where they had a civil calendar of 365 days that aligned with the flooding of the Nile, that allowed them to keep the calendar in sync with the seasons, so that they would consistently know when the flood was. But that was a later addition after they had worked with a lunar calendar, which they then maintained just for religious purposes. There is also the Chinese Lunar New Year, which I don't know the specifics of, but there are different calendars over time that we see that they start on a specific moon in relation to equinoxes or some specific point that they've decided on. In Rome, they started out, so instead of an intercalary month, they started the practice of months that alternate between 30 and 31 days, which I think is our really strong move away from lunar calendars, compared to the intercalary system, because 30 and 31 days are not how long the lunar cycles are anymore, and they also feel slightly arbitrary. And then Caesar at some point added in the leap year to make sure that our 30 and 31 day months will continue to line up with the solar year. And then in 1528, Pope Gregory XIII had made the Gregorian calendar by adjusting the leap years, and now that's the calendar we still have now, and it has almost nothing to do with the moon, even though we still call it months, and they're still roughly the length of the lunar cycle. Is intercalary just a month with however many days to fill the gap? Yes, it's just a month that fills as many days as they needed it to. Let's see what else I had. Did I make a slide with that on it? I don't think I did. Where did that end up? Anyway, in Mesopotamia as well, they were able to figure out oh no, I did put it in there, I just skipped over it. They were able to, through their observations, they figured out the Metonic cycle, which is 18.6 years. And that was how they determined their intercalary months, so that they were able to keep things in line with the solar year. And I meant to figure out that, so there's at least like 4 distinct cycles of the moon, actually, of different lengths. You may ask a question. Let me fact check myself on which one the Metonic cycle is. I don't know if I can even like understand it well enough. The other cycles I gave up on. I cannot present these to you properly. Okay, the Metonic cycle is the time it takes for the lunar phases to occur at the same time of the solar year again. So every 18.6 years, the lunar cycles will align in the same way with the solar cycle. If that makes any sense. Why'd the Gregster change the leap years? I do not know. There was still some... I don't know the specifics, but there was still some flaw in the calendar from the Romans that made it not quite line up exactly. Add an extra day. Oh, okay. Yeah, also when they established the Gregorian calendar, or was it when Caesar added leap years? On at least one of these, they had to just like skip days. They just had to skip like, I think 10 or 11 days. And I have to wonder, like, I think people were really upset about that. People went, wait a second, you stole 11 days from me, give them back. Which is fun. I wouldn't... How do you skip days? You just decide it's a different day. The sun and moon are playing an 18.6 year long polyrhythm. Yes. You skipped my birthday. Yeah, what happens when they skip your birthday? How can you sync with a year when the calendar aligns midway through the year? Man, I don't understand time zones most of the time. You think I can answer that? I can barely tell you what time it is in the next time zone over without getting confused, okay? You're gonna have to find that one out on your own. I also had a fun fact about Rome that I didn't actually try to include in a slide or anything because I could not confirm it. I found this stated in so many different places, just sort of vaguely, and I couldn't find an actual source of who said this or why we think it's true. But the Romans apparently thought that moonstone, the rock, was actually hardened moonlight. Very demon souls. Conspiracy theory that like 200 years just didn't happen? Okay, sure. Actually it's Friday now, the Emperor said so, yeah, basically. People talk about how Earth is clearly a sign there was a miracle. Why did we get two different ways of measuring time that don't line up? Yeah. Hello. Does Shork always think of Rome at least once a month? It's a bad month if I have to think of Rome. Makes this a bad month. Makes last month a bad month. According to historians, the riot over stolen days was apocryphal / satirical narrative among the upper class to make fun of the ignorant lower class. Oh! I guess that makes sense. Back in that day, people probably wouldn't have cared that much. Looking at Moonstone, you can see it, yeah. We're all agreeing that the Romans were onto something? Yep. The only time the Romans were onto something. We have hardened moonlight. Alright. Speaking of the moon and months and calendars, we also have the fun variable naming of months throughout history and throughout different cultures. Which is reflective of the kind of environment and climate and things where people lived over time, which I think is really cool. Our current month names are not very meaningful to what they align with in the year. I picked out a couple, and down this is the lower right. We'll circle back to the other ones. Our current month names, we have January definitely aligns with the beginning of the year. And May kind of aligns with a summery sort of feeling. But for the most part, our current months are named after emperors, numbers. Very exciting. My favorite month is July because I just love Julius Caesar. Yeah, things are like that now for us. And I think that's pretty dull compared to the moon of the blackberry, the moon of mulberry, the moon of peach. I think it'd be great if we had months celebrating the foods that are ripe at that time. That'd be beautiful. I guess this was a pretty cool guy, but a whole month, right? The conspiracy theory is called the missing time theory. Ideas an influential emperor in 800 AD wanted his reign to begin in a more auspicious sounding year of 1000. Oh, okay. We could also have moon when the ducks come back, moon when the choke cherries are ripe, moon when the wind shakes off leaves, and moon when the trees crack from the cold. We were talking a bit ago about how trees were exploding because of the cold weather. That's not new. They've always been doing it. The Lakota people knew that. I think I even saw a different one that listed that. That it was one of their winter months was when the trees crack from the cold, more or less. We have Old English ones, which I only included a few of. I don't know how to say any of those, but we got the month of cakes. I also liked month of weeds. I thought that was a charming one. Also Egypt again, they had months where it was, they were grouped into 3 seasons of 4 months, and they were the months of flood, growth, and low water, and so it would be flood 1, 2, 3, 4, growth 1, 2, 3, 4, and low water 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a fun, different, and also meaningful way to name the months. Wasn't Howard the Duck from the moon? That didn't come up in my reading if it is true. That's possible. But these are a few, and there's sort of, you can see the differences in like, they're very regional, which I think is really fun. No, I did not read the section on Howard the Duck. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, I missed it. Do I have I changed the order of these a little bit, so I have to shuffle around my notes to get to the ones I need next. All right. What's a good transition to this topic? We have not only the way we have perceived the cycles of the moon over time, but also the way we have seen other effects of the moon and the things that it is responsible for, like the tides. So the Greeks don't really have a lot of myths about the tides and how they originate, because the Mediterranean doesn't have a large tidal range, and it wasn't a common connection for them to make that the moon was the cause of the tides. They did believe that the moon was connected to the tides, but it wasn't like important enough for them to have much to say about it, or to make myths around it. So we don't see much of that from the classical world. But we do get Galileo in 1616, even though that far back they went, you know what? The moon That's the tides. They got something to do with each other, even if we don't get it. But Galileo had other thoughts. He said, there's no way. I thought that was so funny that Galileo, of all people, went, no, there's no way that the moon causes the tides. That's crazy. Sir, how? Everyone is sometimes wrong. See, if even Galileo can be wrong. Don't beat yourself up. But places that were closer to seas other than the Mediterranean, where there was a huge tidal range, or at least, you know, a more significant tidal range, without gravity, it does seem superstitious. You know, without clear idea of gravity, that does, you know, we should give him credit. Places that were tied to the oceans, and places where there were higher tides do have myths about how the tides originated. So we have an illustration here of a drinking challenge that Thor was put to in Norse mythology, where he was challenged to drink all of a certain amount, but then it turned out that the drinking horn was connected to the sea. So he was attempting to drink the whole ocean. He couldn't do it. He did drink enough to lower the level of the ocean, though, and that's how the tides happened. The water continued to go up and down from there. Yeah, Giga Chad Thor tried to drink the whole ocean. Not knowingly, of course. He was a little bit upset when he found out also. Yeah. Did he not at some point go, man, this sucks, it's so salty? I don't know, maybe some of the magic of however they connected it to the ocean was also, making it taste better? I don't know. I don't know, man. But tides also take on their own significance in a lot of different places throughout history, and are generally associated with birth and death, which we see even in Dickens. I saw a reference to in David Copperfield. They describe that there's a dying man, and he will either die when the tide is out, or he'll live until the next low tide, and he'll die then, because that's how strongly associated the tides were with death, and also that the sort of connected idea that births would only happen at the high tide. We'll see more of the idea of the moon being connected with water continuing as well. He was also tasked to lift the king's cat, but failed because the cat wasn't what it seemed. Yeah, there were a lot of funny tricks. It's a fun story. I didn't read the whole thing in a lot of detail, but Thor definitely got tricked in a more than one way. Boop could corroborate the thing with Thor, yeah. Were low tide birds cursed or something like that? I don't know. I think it was just that there was. I mean, maybe they did. I didn't run into anything that specifically about that, but that is possible. I think it was just generally viewed that it was likely to not happen until the high tide. So maybe it was an ill-favored thing to be born at a low tide. Oh, I have a science note in here I almost forgot about tides. And somebody's gonna say that this is probably not true, and it's been disproven, and it is probably at least partly disproven. I saw at least one source say that it's unlikely, but I don't understand how we can completely dismiss it. But the moon, millions and millions of years ago, used to be closer to the Earth than it is now. It is still moving away from the Earth. But that would have increased the range of the tides, which could have contributed to the movement of life from the sea to land, because of the, like, it would have increased the amount of, or relative to now, there would have been a higher tidal range and more opportunity for those early life forms to end up on the land and to have to adapt to it. The moon also is what stabilizes the Earth's rotation and allows for stable temperatures that allow life to develop as it has. The moon is leaving us. Don't worry, it'll come back. Apparently the trajectory of the moon, I did not really understand the science behind this. But currently the moon is spiraling away from us very slowly, and at some point it will get far enough away that it starts to come back. And they said that theoretically it would crash into the Earth eventually at that point, but the solar system probably won't make it that long. I don't like thinking about it. Yeah. The legends of sea monsters. Tidal waves were more chaotic. I don't think that sea monsters would necessarily just be related to tides as much as just like storms at sea and whatnot, but it could be connected to tides as well. You sure? Yeah. No. One of the reasons Mars is a desert is it didn't have a large moon to stabilize it. There you go. But also, scientists have looked at corals from 370 million years ago, and were able to determine that the years at that time were 400 days long. Because they have daily growth lines that go in yearly cycles, and so they were able to count that the years were 400 days long back then. Yippee. We'll be able to just move Earth. Yeah, definitely. How do they determine that? What I just said. That's too long. Yep. That's neat. Not the worst coffee. Uh-oh. Something else funny that the moon does aside from the tides is the eclipse. If yours were 400 days, that would mean the Earth was further away from the sun, right? No, that's, the moon hadn't slowed the Earth down. Well, maybe, I don't know. I don't know the effect on this, compared to the sun, but I know that, like, the moon slowed down the Earth's rotation since then, and it is still slowing it down. But we also have the eclipse. I didn't bring a specific example for this one, but eclipses historically in mythology were seen as two opposing forces fighting it out. We have historical records of eclipses. I actually, this answer has changed since one of the books I read. In one of my sources, I read that the farthest back record we had of an eclipse was from China in something like 1100 BC, I think. And when I went to double check that, apparently we have something older now from 1223 BC. On a Syrian clay tablet, there was a record. They found record of an eclipse, and sort of backtracking based on those is another way that they've been able to track changes in the speed of the Earth. They're having an aura battle, yeah. And of course, solar eclipses like this get most of the fame for freaking people out, but a lunar eclipse sort of influenced, potentially determined the outcome of the Peloponnesian War, because the Athenians were going to retreat and flee, but a lunar eclipse happened, and their really superstitious general decided that it was a sign they shouldn't try to retreat and they should stay, and they got wrecked. They got absolutely destroyed, and that was the turning point in the war for them that afterward they did not recover from. So that's a fun one. Lunar eclipses are so underwhelming. Oh, that's so mean. Yeah, the eclipse betrayed them. They thought it was a sign of evil, and I guess it was in a way. It was a warning, but they maybe took it wrong. Yeah, they got some mixed signals. Oh. Guys, I put too much in this talk. Guys, I put too much in this talk. It's okay. It's fine, we'll get there. We're getting there. Oh. Where's my next one? Where's my next one? There it is. You always hear Athens was so enlightened, then you hear stories like that. I mean, people are allowed mistakes. Here we have, oh. Sorry, I forgot I can't rescale that window. I do have a T, it's not helping. Anyway, we don't know why the cow jumped over the moon. I'm so sorry, I cannot tell you why the cow jumped over the moon. I tried to find out, it's lost to time. The moon doesn't have an ending. I can just list facts until I feel like it. No, I prepared all of this, I'm going over it. It took me so long to put it all together. We're doing it. I might not be able to talk tomorrow, but we'll do it. I spent a while in the last couple of days, maybe not a while, maybe not so long, but I tried really hard to find specific sources about the moon and witches, and it's really hard to find things other than like modern witchcraft stuff. It's really hard actually to find specific historical sources about like the moon and witches. So I have Shakespeare. We have Shakespeare as an example of what was commonly of witches being commonly associated with the night and with the moon. I have a quote here from The Tempest on a witch who is claimed to be so powerful she could control the moon. We also have the moon also comes up in Othello, being responsible for madness. There's also the witches in Macbeth who call upon the moon. Another reason to hold a grudge against modern witches. Look, that's your prerogative. But that's a bit of that. I think everybody kind of has in mind, you know, witches and the moon. There was also in the 7th century, not 17th, long before that. The 7th century, we have the Bishop of Noyon. I have no idea where that is. I should have checked, but it's a funny name. He wrote down a long list of pagan behaviors that were to be avoided, and included, do not call the sun or moon masters or swear by them, and do not shout at the eclipse of the moon. Which would imply that these are things that people actually did, whether that's really true or not. He seemed to be concerned about stopping people from doing that, so... Those were not what good Christians did. Those were horrible pagan things that you should not do. According to a 7th century bishop. How the moon's gravity affected the cow. Great. Steam Soul straight searching about it, found almost nothing. Yeah, it's really hard to find stuff about witches and the moon. It's weird. It made me want to go read about witches. This made me want to like learn about witches more and stuff, but that's beside the point. Anyway, howdy! Instructions on clear screen with the moon. Now I have a presence of I cannot be held responsible for any results of screaming at the moon. No, I do know what the next talk is gonna be already, actually. I think. I can't believe Christianity took away moon shouting. I know! Speaking of them, we have the hot cross bun, which I should have included a picture of normal hot cross bun. But it's, you know, a bun with a cross on it. Imagine the little bread. Apparently there are a lot of different cultures where buns that are crossed on the top were common and were offered for different reasons. We had like Roman crossed buns for Diana, who was also associated with the moon. And as well as in other cultures, and also this is bread from Pompeii. It's not crossed in the same way, but it is crossed on top. I thought it was very funny that we have bread from Pompeii. One of your university professors was a specialist in early modern witches and witch trials. Ooh, that sounds cool. Called a precursor of pizza. Why? Because it's crossed on top? Okay. Sure. I also have the Moon Tarot on here. I also could not find really good information on the Moon Tarot. I'm told that the lobster is supposed to be a crab. And associated with Cancer, the constellation, or the zodiac, Cancer, which would connect it to the moon. I don't know astrology. I tried to find fun things about the Moon Tarot, and I was confused, and they conflicted each other, and I don't tarot's not for me, perhaps, but I was told that the dog and the wolf could represent the fears of the mind when they are within the purely reflected light of the moon, and without the sort of pure regular light of the sun, and that there's like confusion and fear that comes from that. Which made me think of Bloodborne! It's like the beastly side of humanity. So that's a bit more of fun superstitions. I also have that apparently even in Victorian England, people would tip their hats to the moon. And they considered it a sin to point at the moon. The more you know. Don't point at the moon, guys. It's bad. Alright, the part of what you've all been waiting for. The figures in the moon. The blank in the moon. The other reason why it's considered precursor to pizza, there's an old painting with fruits and cheese and other stuff on top of it. Oh, okay. Maluna. It's to stop annoying children, right? Probably. So here we have different ideas of the blank in the moon. I don't know what this one is. I also have no idea what's up with this one, but I will say, until I saw this image and until I was putting together this talk, I had never understood the man in the moon. I had never seen him before. Like, I've heard about the rabbit and I can totally see the rabbit. I had never understood what the man in the moon was supposed to be. But apparently this one in the middle is like the common image of the man in the moon, and like, what? He's gorgeous. I love him. He's great. Right? You look at this and I go, I guess. That was like a full person, right? Well, this one is a different idea of the man in the moon and a dog. That I can see that one. What is number 4? I have no idea what number 4 is. I don't know what 4 or 5 are, honestly, but I thought they were funny. They were part of this image. I went, okay, you can come. I have nothing to say about you, but I don't know. Yeah, 5 is a lady, which I had never heard of. I can see it. I can actually see her better than I can see the man in the moon, but I don't know. People were really bored back then. I guess they must have been. Anyway, the man in the moon is typically described as having been banished to the moon for crime. In a German version of the story, he was a Sabbath breaker who, on Sunday, he went gathering twigs instead of resting as he was supposed to. He didn't go to church like a good noodle, so he was banished to the moon, and that's why he has his bundle of sticks with him on the moon. In the English version, he's a thief, and he was stealing a bundle of thorns. That's what he carries up there. Number 3 with Bauhaus. Jeez. Thank you for the shock. I know. That's the 4th page. It is. Also, it used to be harder to get close up such bigger versions. It means people could fudge it a bit more. That's true. I guess if you imagine, like, purely off of your power of looking up at the moon, what you'd be able to see. I still don't see the man in the moon, but maybe they had something else. The German version of that myth, by the way, first appears written in English in the 12th century. So it's at least that old, and the English one about the bundle of thorns is at least as old as the 15th century. So those are ideas that have been around a long time. The man in the moon can also be associated with drunkenness. One folk tale about the lunar eclipse is that he turns red because he's drunk. So that's fun. He's had too much to drink that day. And then you see in most commonly throughout East Asian myths, but also in other myths like apparently Mongolian and Aztec myths believe in the rabbit in the moon or the hare. Take your pick. And it's usually seen as this drawing doesn't have it as part of it, but it's usually seen the rabbit is like doing something. Usually it's like there's the rabbit's head and arms, and then like roughly here it's seen to be like holding something. It's like got a mortar and pestle or something. So in some myths, it's making rice cakes. In some, it's making... I think the Chinese myth is that it's making the elixir of immortality. So he's up to something up there. In a Buddhist story about the rabbit in the moon. The leader of the gods disguised himself as just a poor dude. There's a lot more to this story. I'll have a link to it if you want to read the whole thing. But where the story ends up is that he doesn't have any more food, and the rabbit offers itself up and goes, "If I will jump into the fire so that you can eat me, without having to kill me, and I will offer myself to you." And so he jumps into the fire, and then the god pulls him out of the fire and goes, "No, it's okay." And then paints him onto the moon as a way to immortalize him as a good noodle for offering himself up. And then one of the books I read mentions an image from the moon that I don't think caught on, but I'm sure that at the time the book was written, the author thought it would catch on. It's the basketball player on the moon. I'm sure when he wrote it, he thought that would become a thing. But I don't think it has. It's not even on the Wikipedia page. I was surprised I could find this image. The fifth image is a modern one compared to the other ones. Yeah, so the thing that I can definitely see about that is that I'll put the basketball player back, but this one is based on this crater and the rays out from this crater, which like you cannot see without assistance. You cannot see that very clearly without assistance, so like it makes sense that this would be way more modern. This screws teacher trying to connect with the kids, doesn't it? Original OC to steal. You miss 100% of the shots you don't make. But yeah, that's if you wanna tell. Oh my god, Space Jam. This is it. This is the deep Space Jam lore you guys didn't know you needed. The bees, oh no. Okay. Oh man. Oh. Alright. That was the blink on the moon. We have a much less text-heavy slide. I have a lot of notes for this one, though. Not the moon's got bees. Back in medieval medicine, the moon was related to the four humors, being most closely associated with phlegm. Not Miku. So if someone was considered phlegmatic, they were more susceptible to the changes of the moon influencing them. They were also considered more reflective and sensitive. But that would also be associated with moisture on sort of like the if I'm trying to get this right, these work on a gradient of hot and cold and dry and wet. So moon and phlegm would be more of the cold and wet association. And this was how they tried to determine this was medicine. This was medicine back then. They were working on it. Again, way more interesting world building than current medicine, I gotta say. But the moon was seen to have an influence on moisture and extending to like the weather, and extending also to the moisture in our own bodies. If the moon influences the tides, why not also us and the water inside us? So it was also believed that the waxing or full moon would be an aid to those who were ill, and a waning or new moon was a bad sign and would not be helpful for recovery. So if somebody was sick during a waning moon, it was believed that they were going to have a harder time recovering or not recover. Whereas the waxing moon was seen as a boon to them. And they took that principle into the timing of surgeries. Back in the day, they would time when they decided to do a surgery based on the phases of the moon so that it would have a greater chance of success. There was also like an idea of like the phase of the moon could influence like the amount of bleeding that a patient had, and I'm pretty sure that idea continued as like as a myth even after it was disproven for a really long time in medicine. I think I might have seen that that's still a thing today in some countries, is that they'll only do surgeries at certain times because it's believed that it affects the bleeding. I'm out of tea. Got a cough on the waning moon. Sorry, bro, it's just over. Sorry, nothing we could do for you. Sorry, oops, sorry, that was loud. The moon's a vampire, oh my god. I would have had to probably read a lot of Paracelsus's work to verify this, but I tried to. But one of the books I read said that Paracelsus, in his medical practice, took this to the point of giving people lunar plants, so plants that were associated with the moon, which included thyme and Christmas rose. I think it was a matter of like the color of the flowers or the foliage that would determine what kind of plant was associated with the moon. I really wanted to know more about that, and I was really sad I couldn't find anything. You're saying they use moongrass as healing items. Yeah, maybe. If I were a peasant in ye old times, should get lobotomy for my headache during a waxing moon. Yes. The moon was also seen to affect mental health. Here we see a 17th century depiction of moonstruck women who've gone mad and are rejecting their husbands under the influence of the full moon. It was believed for a very long time, at least through the 19th century, that exposure to moonlight would make people insane. Women see the full moon and know it's girls' night, yeah. It was also thought that it was not safe to sleep in moonlight, so people would make sure that their windows were closed up and nice and safe, so that the moon would not make them insane or sick in the night. Do not stray, women. That's pure lunacy, exactly. God forbid the girlies have hobbies. I know. And this belief is stated in places like the Bible and by Aristotle, and people absolutely are just on from there. They also, the Greeks believed in going back to the moon being tied to moisture. Because they saw the moon as opposite of the sun, and the sun was hot and drying, and then the moon was wet and cooling. that would influence internally as well. Sway your wife and stay inside at night. Yeah, keep her safe from the lunatic issue. What if the moon actually did drive people crazy for a little and then stopped doing that? That's the real question. I mean, it's who knows? Who knows? There was a lot of belief for a long time. Also, there were specific references to what we now know as epilepsy, being caused by the full moon and by sleeping in the full moon. And we now know that epilepsy can actually be influenced by having too much light at night. That actually can cause people to have problems. And so it is entirely possible that this lunacy idea wasn't completely unfounded. There was obviously a lot of troubles with it, but it is possible that it did cause people with epilepsy trouble to have slept in the moonlight. But nowadays, we don't have such a strong influence from the light of the moon because we're surrounded by artificial light, so it's not really applicable anymore. It's not something that you would ever notice. You would never really pick out the influence of specifically the moon's light on somebody's sleep because we're already surrounded by so much artificial light at night anyway. Generally. But it took until the middle of the 19th century for people to actually bother to disprove this and to get them to stop putting people in asylums for nothing. To just locking them away and ignoring them. Good times. Let's see what else I got. Where did it go? There it is. For Moon Madness? Yeah, for Moon Madness. Maybe not always specifically Moon Madness, but you know. Yeah. Yeah. Moon looks like a disco ball in this picture. You know, they are partying. The moon is actually the precursor to the disco ball, fun fact. Not true. But I don't, maybe it is. I wish I had a better image for this one. There's maybe something else I should have grabbed for it, but it's okay. As I mentioned before, there was a bunch of association with moon gods and plants and vegetation and growth. And so it was believed that the moon influenced the growth of plants. There have been a lot of different ways that that's supposedly manifested and different theories of potential how that potentially works. That's now generally thought to be untrue, but it is actually possible, based on current science, possible that the moon does have some influence on the growth of plants. But they believed back in the olden days that because the waning moon would be more dry and the waxing moon more wet, that the waxing moon increased the growth of plants. And also that, like, trees should only be cut during a waning moon because they'll produce better lumber because they're drier. And that was established in, I think, ancient Rome. And then it was even a law in 18th century France that trees could only be cut during a waning moon. Plants are like magnets, no one knows how they work. What does the moon being dry or wet even mean? Well, it was thought to have... Okay, so there's a few different ideas. So, one way that... So, if you think about, like, as the moon is waning... I don't think I have this, like, description right. But it's thought that the moon will either hold or pour water. to the Earth, and so it has an influence on weather and moisture in general, based on like the shape. If you think of like the crescent moon as like a cup, with like the waters of growth and life in it that can either be collected as part of the moon, or, you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, these ideas extended into a lot of different gardening and farming practices. In the Middle Ages, they thought that turnips would grow better in the waxing moon, and medicinal herbs should be picked at the full moon because they would be stronger. And I read a bit about the gardener John Gerard, who this illustration is by, who did the garden planning for Queen Elizabeth in the 16th century. And he was very dedicated to doing all of his garden planning based on the moon, because she was also associated with Diana and thus the moon. So he was very specific about when things could be planted or picked or transferred. He said that if you gathered fruit in the waxing moon, it would be bitter. So that was a no-go. It was interesting. There's definitely a lot more to be found out about that one. It was a neat one. I thought that was cool. Turnips are moon-like, true. I didn't even make that connection. There was another one. They said leeks also grow better in the waxing moon. So the things in the sky literally affected how things on Earth work too. Yeah, starlight was God's grace shining through. Dominant stars would affect people born at that time. Yeah, and that's kind of like the foundation of astrology, right? Which we of course fully discredit these days. And I feel like we don't really, the way that astrology is and is depicted these days, we kind of miss out on what it was actually supposed to be like originally. People put a lot of stock in astrology back in the day. That was a really big deal, that like it was believed that there was a literal direct influence of the stars and the planets and stuff on people's lives. Using charts was probably onto something. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, now it's just something to put on your dating profile. Yeah, and there's like no meaning behind it. Whether or not you think that like any of that's true or not, the way it manifests and the way people engage with astrology these days is like completely meaningless. It's not even like attempting anything. People don't know like what it's supposed to come from. But speaking of which, we largely don't believe that the moon has a great influence on plants or on ourselves anymore, like we did back then. I think people have shown that because of the way gravity works, that a human being is such a small amount of water that it's not technically possible that the moon could have any significant enough tidal effect to make a difference. It was also been believed at times that the moon could pull the water in plants and affect their growth in that way. I think that's largely not believed anymore. But there are some living things that are influenced by the moon. There are sea creatures that do certain things in cycle with the moon. Part of that is based on the tide, part of that is based on the light at night. Part of it for some, it helps them coordinate mass spawning. It's not a matter of the specifics of the light or the tide or anything, it's just a matter of giving them a consistent signal for that. There's also nocturnal animals that will prefer to hunt on the full moon because they can see better, presumably. Also no reason for the moon to just pull the water. Yes? Right. But some plants will turn their leaves towards the moon throughout the night as well, so that's kind of fun, and it makes sense in a way. It is reflected sunlight. Timing my high jump competition, so go higher when the moon's over. Thinking maybe the reflected light of the full moon would give a tiny fraction of photosynthesis, not gravity. Yeah, that's possible. Plants will move to follow the moon. Does it not pull the rest of the matter? Oh, yes. Yes, that does. Yeah, I see your point. I see your point there. Well, it is easier for it to pull water than for it to pull other things. That's kind of how the tides work. There's, the moon itself, this is more astronomy stuff. The moon itself is not perfectly spherical because of the tidal bulge that it has. Because the gravity of the Earth's pull on it pulls it into a sort of slightly oblong shape, because of the way the pole is oriented. It doesn't, and because there's no water to absorb that pull like there is on Earth, it becomes it influences the landform instead. And that's why I if I remember correctly, that's why Io is so volcanic, is because of the way the tidal pull on it is constantly shifting its crust around, and pulling it in different ways. The more you know. Police are on record as hating nights with the full moon. Yeah, yeah, that's something I read about, is there's a lot of people have done a lot of studies to disprove that there's additional crime or suicide or other mental health issues on the full moon. So like science generally believes that those things aren't true. They've done studies and decided that there's no actual increase in crime or mental health issues associated with the full moon, but take anecdotal evidence however you will. It's being kneaded by Jupiter's gravity. Yeah, Jupiter messes Io up. And that's why it's so volcanic. But our moon has a very steady tidal influence, and so it's not being changed all the time by the Earth's gravity. It's just like it is. I think that was all I had about plants and stuff. Oh, I need to give my voice a second again. Slight intermission. All right, man. It's been 2 hours. It's been 2 hours. We still have a bit to go. Are we going back to the moon soon? Wow, I don't have more tea. I just have water. Yeah, I've been moonstruck. As time flies, I suppose. Okay. We have lunar geography time! Yay! So when Galileo started looking at the moon with with his telescopes, he started trying to map its surface, which people had previously believed to be completely smooth and featureless. And they thought that what we saw on the moon was actually shadows of the Earth. I don't know how they thought that was the case. That it was just a reflection. I guess they thought the moon was like a mirror? I don't know. That's what at least some people believe, but we're gonna see later that some people had different ideas about what was on the moon. Manned orbit of the moon, then a landing at the South Pole. Oh, the South Pole! Ooh! I can mention the South Pole. Do you guys... We're on lunar geography. Do you guys want to... The South Pole of the moon has places that are colder than Pluto because they never see the sun, and there's also water there that's thought to have collected from comets over time. Yeah, it's very, very ice. Dante's idea of the moon patterns are weird. It's like he thought light traveled through it. There were denser and lighter parts. Oh, that's interesting. Wow. I mean, the moon is like a mirror, sure. Okay, but... yeah, okay, but... They were still wrong. You know what I meant. Did you know that Russia's larger than Pluto? I know now. Anyway, they started trying to map the moon in the 17th century with the advent of the telescope because they realized there were actually things to map. But they then took on to the belief that those dark spaces on the moon were oceans. And so they named them Maria, which is the Latin for oceans, the singular being mare. So it's not Maria, it's Mare. And those are the names we still use today, even though we know they are not actually oceans. Even though we know that's not what it is. The dark spots on the moon are actually, I think it's a basaltic kind of stone, that is, dried old lava flows. From when the moon was forming and solidifying into its current shape. But I did also still think that even though it's Maria and not Maria, that's still a fun association given the ocean and Maria and the moon. So then let's see what my other one was. Whoops. We have a bit of Galileo's early efforts at mapping the moon. It's okay. It's okay. He tried. He tried. I had one of the books I read kind of threw shade on his moon mapping attempts and said that this guy on the right was way better. And I mean, yeah, he's right, but you didn't have to do Galileo like that. Do you think it was an intentional choice naming her? It might have been. It might have been, I bet it wasn't, but that'd be fun. Why the shade? It was the half moon. That was just the phase of the moon he drew this at. There's other drawings where he drew it at other phases. This is just the one I included. Galileo confirmed fraud? True. Very true. I have a lot of random facts about moon geography that I think I'm gonna skim over. I have a couple of fun names though. We'll use this image. This is maybe the crowning, I think it's the coolest looking moon map I've seen at the very least. This is the Tabula Selenographica. I have another image of it actually, but I have a much higher resolution image of it that we're gonna look at. Where you can see the names. So these were the names that were established at that time in the 17th century, and a lot of these we still have now. Like the Mare Tranquillitatis, which is the Sea of Tranquility. Mare Serenitatis. Mare Imbrium. think that's Sea of Tears, if I remember right. We have a lot of really fun ones in here. The Mare Mediterraneum. There's a couple of fun things to describe about what we see here, but I want to give you fun names. We have the Palus Putredinus, which is the Marsh of Decay. That's just a fantastic name. Thank you, whoever named that on the moon. We also have the Mare Crisium, the Sea of Crises. Those are my favorite moon geography names that I came across. How did they map the far side of the moon? Well, they did not. These guys sure did. I guess we never see it. Photos. The first sight we had of the far side of the moon was from photos. We'll get there. But something that you can see from this, so you can see that there's like the actual sphere here, right? Or at least like the main circle of it, and then there's these extended portions on each part. This is caused by, oh no, this is still just one side. This is a representation of the effect of libration, which I cannot fully explain to you. It has to do with those other additional cycles of the moon. Oh, rain, that's right. There is one I think that is the Sea of Tears. But that one is rain. These show the effect of libration, which means that like at certain points of the moon's cycle, we see different portions of it actually. The overall total portion of the moon that can be seen from Earth is 59% actually, based on the different librations, the way the little bit of wobble that it has at different points in time. So this map is recording those extra bits of the moon that are visible only sometimes, which is pretty cool. I never thought about that. It makes sense, but easy explanation. The moon is sometimes seen at different angles due to how it orbits and there is yeah, and there's like 2 additional repeating cycles associated with that I don't remember the names of, but that they work on like different timings, and they're based on like whether we get a slightly different to the side view. But that's a bit of the efforts to map the near side of the moon. The 59% of the moon. We'll talk about it being tidally locked, but obviously those things are never exact. I mean it is tidally locked, but I think it's just a matter of like at different times the positioning is just very slightly, it's aligned slightly differently. Like I said, I don't fully understand it, so I don't think I can describe it any better for you, but neat. Did I want to include whatever this is? No, that's fine. Okay. Oh, no, okay, so another fun one is, they thought that all of the craters were volcanoes, because our only point of reference for a crater sort of shape on Earth, at that time at least, was volcanoes, so that's what they thought those were on the moon. And it took until the 19th century for them to not believe that anymore, and it really took until the 20th century in World War I when we were causing some craters of our own for them to prove that craters will always form in a circle no matter the angle of impact. That was kind of the main argument against the weird circles on the moon being impact craters, was that it was believed that those would not form a circular, they would not always form a perfectly circular depression. So. The more you know. Alright, what's my next one? Alright, so some people thought that the moon was blank. And there were no geographical features. And some people thought, a lot of people seem to have thought, and a lot of people also made fun of them for thinking that there were people living on the moon, or something like people. Just explodes on impact. Yeah. So from around the 1st century, we have the idea that there are intelligent beings living on the moon, and that gets expanded on in many ways. The lunatics, the meeple, sure. And then we have the true story, which was a distinctly untrue story, and he knew that. It was written as like a satire of the kinds of legends and things. It was written in 160 AD. That talked about people being whisked away to the moon and finding the moon people led by Endymion fighting the sun people to colonize the North Star. I think that's one of the oldest distinct stories, and that's a satire, so you can already tell that some people maybe didn't think so highly of this concept that there were whole civilizations on the moon. Apparently that I want to read True Story now, because apparently they also go to an island made of cheese and get swallowed by a whale that has fish people living in it. I want to read that now because it sounds really cool. Yeah, it is also usually considered the first science fiction ever written. Oh, I didn't mark where to switch my slide for this one. Let's see what this says. Ah, okay. This is from 1835. There was a man named Richard Adams Locke who is believed to be the author of a series of articles that were published, I think it was the New York Sun, which was a sort of not the most reputable newspaper, anyway. But he wrote a series of articles claiming that a real astronomer, John Herschel, had made all of these really amazing discoveries with his brand new giant telescope. And he went into immense detail about all of the grand new things he had seen on the moon, and the fields of red poppies, and the bat people on the moon, and many people believed in this. Many people went, wow, really? And then weeks later it came out that it was not true. Yeah, the beeple and the weird giraffe things, and the lovely beaches. Well, swimming in the cheese sea sounds like something you dream up after 27 bags of Kit Kat. Yeah. People loved this stuff. They ate it up. What if it's true and just a cover-up? Well. See dinosaur art from the time. Yeah. What was fun? Now, it's apparently potentially was supposed to be a satire. Like True Story. However, Edgar Allan Poe ended up claiming that this story and its contents were plagiarized from a story he had written about a man traveling to the moon to escape his debtors. Which was not a Poe story I had ever heard of. And then he comes back and he only agrees to share information about the moon for if he's forgiven. So that's another one out there. I think I couldn't tell. I didn't read the story, but I think he might have killed the people he was in debt to on the way as he left for the moon. And then he comes back and asks to be pardoned and share the things he says when he from living on the moon for 5 years. The only place the IRS won't catch me. But yeah, Neil Armstrong doesn't want you to know he partied with the Bat people after filming the landing. Yeah, we can't find out. I think in this story he went to the moon via balloon. A balloon carried him up there. Very, very nice. But he claimed that the moon hoax articles were plagiarized because he also apparently like knew the guy who wrote them, and he was his editor at some point. So drama, right? Drama, am I right? But also by this time they knew that the moon didn't have an atmosphere. Or at least around this time, they knew that the moon didn't have an atmosphere, and some people believed that there was an ocean underneath the surface of the moon, or potentially that it was hollow and contained life inside still. Even if it wasn't likely to exist without the atmosphere. There's also a bunch of stories about there being intelligent beings on the moon that do try to take into account that there's no atmosphere. There's one that was like, yeah, there's no atmosphere, so they can't talk. I think that might have even been the Poe one. The no atmosphere just means they can't talk. We didn't really get it yet. But we didn't just think that there were people on the moon. We thought we could go visit them. Because after we had circumnavigated the entirety of our globe in the 16th century, some people went, well, of course we'll go to the moon next. Makes perfect sense. You go to the moon in Mass Effect and shoot some robots? Well, there you go. And this, even Kepler, an actual astronomer, wrote about traveling to the moon, though his is quite obviously fantastical, because in that people are able to travel via the bridge of darkness that connects the Earth to the moon during a solar eclipse. That was not published during his lifetime. He didn't publish that one. He just wrote it for fun. The image we have on the right is from Francis Godwin's The Man in the Moon, where a man is carried to the moon by swans, which was apparently an idea that came from a misunderstanding, or a myth at least, about migrational birds. Apparently it was claimed that, where do the birds go in the winter? The moon. Of course. So obviously if the birds can fly to the moon every winter, they can take someone with them. You can't prove they don't. Exactly. Exactly. He did base his story at least partly on the science of the time. Kepler did as well, of course. Girls go to college, boys go to Jupiter, and birds go to the moon. But yeah, that was in 1638 was Bishop Francis Godwin's The Man in the Moon. We also had people who more seriously tried to design actual spaceships of that time, based on what they knew. But it's not until we get to 1865 with Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon that I think I forgot to get an image related to this. But, that featured the, I forget exactly what they were called, but they were like a gun club that get together and decide that they're gonna put together a cannon that will shoot them to the moon. And that was what inspired the short film, the silent film, that you've probably seen before. I did not get an image. Hold on, let me go grab it. Hold on, let me go grab it. A Trip to the Moon from 1902 was inspired by that book. There it is. That's so small. That works actually. So this is the like the bullet they would have shot from their mega cannon at the moon to reach the moon. Artillerists. Oh, okay. Yeah. When the moon hits your eye, exactly. And then all of this fun and games was ended in 1959 when we finally saw the far side of the moon for the first time and everybody went, man, there's nothing there. Man, there's nothing up there. Where is everybody? So, alas. It's boring! Don't worry, the story of oh no, it's boring, continued beyond this one. Something fun about the far side of the moon, though, is that, you've seen what the near side of the moon looks like and all of the mare there. There are far fewer, Maria. There are far fewer Maria on the far side of the moon, and far more craters on the far side of the moon, presumably because of its tidal lock and because that side has been exposed for longer and is not sheltered by the Earth. So disappointed when you first saw the first side of the moon, yeah. No bad people. But have we looked under the moon? Now you're asking the real questions. Now you're asking the real questions. Have we checked underneath the moon? Let's see. Once we actually reached the moon, that was when everybody really, really went, oh no, the moon's boring. And they stopped caring about the moon. But before that, we did get masterpieces of cinema like Catwomen of the Moon. So at least we got to have fun in the age of film for a little while before we went to the moon and we went, oh, not a lot here, huh? Oh. We're gonna go under the moon in person, there you go. Moon Echo. Man, it just needed a little bit more imagination. They could have had that. But there's a lot of different movies and music and things that reference the moon in different ways. 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I didn't realize was from 1968. I don't know why I thought it was newer than that. But it was the first movie to have a realistic depiction of the moon, compared to the movies before the moon landings, where we were just kind of guessing what it would be like on the moon to depict in our movies. That's why people joked if Kubrick faked the landing. Yeah. Yeah. If there were Catwomen up there, we never would have left. Did he even look under the carpet? Yeah, there probably was a hatch that led to the moon people. No, we found out that they don't have cat girls on the moon, and that's the problem, actually. That's why everybody's so concerned about Mars now, is because they think that there will be cat girls on Mars instead. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who thought that Space Odyssey was way newer than 1968. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Yeah, so who knows? Maybe Mars has the cat girls. We'll have to go find out. But unfortunately, that is where the moon ends up for us. It's just kind of up there, and we don't really lend it the kind of significance that we used to, and it's just a big hunk of rock up there that we don't really care very much about anymore. For the most part. But I know we are coming to the end, but I know that there is still one more burning question about the moon that has yet to be answered. And so I've presented you here with the actual most accurate depiction of the surface of the moon from Wallace and Gromit Grande out, proving that it is made of cheese. This is the most this is 2001, forget about it. 1989, this is what the moon really looks like. Yes. This is it. This is the real truth. Of the moon. Of the surface of the moon. But what kind? I mean, look at it. That looks like a nice mild cheddar to me. This looks like a nice cheddar, I'd say. It seems to be firm enough for them to picnic on. It's got that nice mellow yellow color to it. Gouda? You think Gouda? I don't know. I don't know. If you put a US flag on the moon, does that make it government cheese? Yes. Yes. You cut deeper, you get to harder and harder cheeses. Yeah, exactly. It's Swiss. Look at the craters. Oh, now wait a second. But Swiss is, I don't know. Swiss isn't that yellow. I don't know. But if that wasn't the case, if Wallace and Gromit was not actually the most accurate depiction of the surface of the moon ever made, then theoretically, hypothetically, the explanation of the idea that the moon is made of cheese would be based on a proverb referring to those who are not smart enough to tell that the reflection of the moon in water is not a wheel of cheese. As you can see, this is a wolf dismayed at the discovery that or I guess confused. He's been tricked. He believes that the reflection of the moon in the water is a wheel of cheese. So there you go. The origin of the idea before it was proven to be true by Wallace and Gromit. He was looking down for the cheese when he should have been looking up exactly. But I saw the cheese in the well. Yeah, so there's a variety of stories and like kids stories and stuff that use this idea throughout history. And that's all I brought for you today. That's the moon! I hope you've learned something about our journey and in our perceptions and ideas about the moon. I hope that maybe you have a different way of appreciating it now, perhaps. I have sources I'll switch to in a minute, and then I will put in the description. There's some links to some of the things I said there's links to, and also the books I read. Yeah, I made it through. I wanted more from this talk. I think it could have been better, but I think it turned out okay. I think we got there. My voice is gonna be dead. It doesn't even like really hurt. I'm just like losing it, you know? Just tired also. Thank you guys for coming and watching and being interested in the moon. It's always cool to me that you guys are interested in these. And I like sharing things with folks. I like learning things and sharing things I learn and whatnot. I think I know what the next talk will be. I think I'm going to commit to doing a talk on Dutch Golden Age painting. So that's something I already really love a lot, so... Well, thank you, Edgar, and thank you, Ashiakato, thank you! Moontastic and cheese indeed. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking for the next one. I already have some sources picked out to read for it, and it's something that I know at least a little bit about already as well. It'll be my first time doing a talk on something that I already know a lot about. Maybe not a lot, but I already know at least something about, and that I like really actively have a lot of care for. So that should be fun, but there'll still be a lot to do for it, and I'm not gonna start working on it immediately. But look forward to that as potentially the next one. Next time will be full nerd, maybe. Maybe. The talks I've done so far, it's been kind of a matter of sort of researching it from scratch, you know? So it'll be interesting to try to go a little bit further with my research since I already know some basics and whatnot. That could turn out to be cool. Yeah. I'm glad you guys liked the moon. I hope you guys will look forward to that, yeah. Really enjoyable and educational, yay! I was so worried when it was space. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to find any space things to tell people. Everybody already knows everything I could possibly find about it. So this was my spin on that brought it closer to things I'm usually interested in. And oh, let me show you. This is my sources slide. I'm gonna put all of this in the description as well. I wanted to point out one of these. This third book here, has a ton of moon myths in it. I didn't get to finish this book. I decided that it was too big. I only read the first couple chapters, but it's really cool, and it has a lot of like, it's a different kind of book. It's a different kind of book. If you're looking for something that's purely dry and historical, that's maybe not it. It definitely is like spinning you through the narrative of the meaning of the moon throughout history. But I thought it was really cool, and I decided it was like too big of an undertaking for me for this talk to come together. But I do want to read the rest of it. But Moon Myth and Image was really neat, what I did read of it. And it has a lot of different myths and stuff in there. And some of these are the ones that I mentioned. These links are ones that I mentioned throughout, that you can check out if you want to read more about some of those things. Let me just put this in the description now so I don't forget. It was really hard to find books about the moon, but I tried. Okay. Ta-da! It's all in there now. And oh, I have to show you guys the schedule. It's Sunday. It's Sunday. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So because we didn't do this yesterday and because cross stitch was supposed to be today, we will do cross stitch tomorrow. And then ignore what it says on the poll. I forgot to make the poll. There's no poll up now. It's not these. I don't know what it will be. I will figure that out soon. I knew I was forgetting something. Then it'll be Demon Souls on Wednesday and then no stream on Thursday. And then for Friday the 13th, we're gonna play Umigari. I saw that came out and that'll be great timing for Friday the 13th. And then we'll cross stitch again on Saturday and then members drawing stream again on Sunday. And a special note for Sunday, stream will be 1 hour later than usual. Okay, we're starting it at noon instead of 11 Pacific time. And how do we vote on the poll? Well, once the poll is available, if you are a devotee of Boo, which is a tier 3 member, then you can vote on that. Yeah! I'll get this finalized and posted, and I will see you guys for cross-stitching tomorrow! Yay! Anyway, again, I hope you guys enjoyed the moon. I'm gonna go rest my voice now and eat food. And I hope you all have a good rest of the day or night or whatever it is where you are. And I hope to see you next time. Bye bye!